Hi, good morning. This is Bhushan. I am project manager in one of the largest IT companies in India, and I have an experience of around 13 years in this industry. My domain experience has been in telecom industry and in the business intelligence area. So I am here today to give a presentation on requirement gathering, which is one of the areas of the project management, comes under the scope management area. What I plan to cover today is some of the requirement gathering techniques, which as a student of as a management student or any engineering student should be aware, like what are the various techniques involved in requirement gathering. So yeah, so what are we covering today? What are the various techniques for requirement gathering? Which technique is best for a situation? What are the problems of bias during requirement gathering? What are the sources of information available? What is the goal and what is the end result of gathering information about requirements? Yeah. So requirement gathering being key to any project management area. When we start any project, it's one of the most important initial stages of the project. As a student of a management institute or even an engineering student should be very well aware of what goes into requirement gathering, what are the techniques behind it. Having a knowledge of that would give you a good understanding of how the project runs. What are the major classifications of requirement gathering? What are the various requirements? The major ones are business requirements and the solution requirements. Now the business requirements are basically the organizational needs or the business opportunities or the reasons why the project itself is being taken. Now this is very crucial from the point of view of the management itself, who is or the project owner, why this requirement is needed or why this project is needed. So these are basically the high level business requirements which are covered here, and the stakeholders are mostly from the business owners or the project sponsor. Next are the solution requirements. Solution requirements has two different ones. One is the functional requirement and a non-functional requirement. Functional requirement basically covers the features and functions of any application, and the non-functional requirements will be nothing to do with the product itself, but more to do with the reliability, security and the performance, safety and many other things similar to that. So these being the two major requirements, there are other requirements as well. There will be a quality requirement, there will be project requirement, project specific requirement. So these are the two which one needs to know. So these are what are the various requirements we are talking about. But the intention of this session is to cover the various techniques involved in gathering the requirement. Let's go to the next slide. So what are the sources of requirement? Sources, basically what I mean here is from where are we going to get the requirements for any project. Say let's take an example of an e-commerce website project, be it Flipkart, Amazon or Snapdeal. As an example, we will be taking up some e-commerce website example now and then. So the sources of collecting requirement would be the project charter itself. Project charter would let you know who the owner, the sponsor, and the basic description of the requirement itself. The statement of work. Statement of work would basically, which is always called the SOW. It is basically the it will cover the basic requirements of the project itself, why this, what is being asked for, what are the end results expected, what are the outputs expected. So this is at high level, and it will form a base to take the information at the initial stages. Then there is a stakeholder register. The stakeholder register will basically consist of all the names and contacts of important stakeholders involved in the project. The stakeholders could be the project owner, the sponsor, the customer himself, and everyone who is responsible for giving the requirements. It could be even the end user itself, you know. So it's basically the list of all people who could provide us with requirements. Then we have the reports, the end reports. Now this is like going backwards, looking at the final result and then getting back to finding out what is needed to get this done. So this reports, final reports would help you assess, okay, we want to get this done, let's work it backwards and get back to what all would be needed to get this out. The other thing are the forms, various forms which are being existing and are being used. We'll assess them, and that will also provide us a source of requirement. And the procedures, what are the existing procedures being followed? Say you are automating any existing process, and the project itself is about automating an existing functionality, then you would prefer looking into the procedures being followed currently. So these are the procedure documents, you can just go through them, and it's a major source of requirement. What are the steps being followed? And then last but not the least, the users themselves. You want to make sure that you are including the users. They are the key source of information, and as they are going to use it, they will have a lot of requirements that they want to ensure are present in your output. Next slide. So what are the characteristics an analyst should possess? You know, an analyst, one who is going to gather requirement. Now this is one of the, this person is very important in the initial, he's a very important person to ensure the success of project. If the requirements are never captured in the right interest of the project, then we never have a successful project. And also could be that the cost would rise at a later stage, since the right requirements were not captured and you are discovering new things at a later part when things will cost you more to fix them. So an analyst should possess these qualities. These are a few of them, there must be many more. These are some few important qualities which we would look into. He questions everything. He should be open to listen. He should have good listening skills. I'm sure when he listens properly, that's when he is going to question more and more. He should be impartial. He should be open to find the best solution for the organization. Now, when we say impartial, what I mean is he should not be biased to any particular opinion and should be open to gather all information that is being shared. Relaxation of constraints. He should not have any constraints, personal constraints or his personal views as well at the initial stage. Maybe he can share it, but he should be open enough to absorb whatever is being shared by the stakeholders. And attention to detail. he should be a sharp observer and reframing, viewing the organization in new ways. Since every new project is taken up with doing things in new way or improvising the existing things, I'm sure the analyst should first be open to see what new we are planning to do with the project, and he should be not restricting himself to the old procedures or the old mentality or the thought that was already being used in the project. Yeah. So this is about the analyst. Let's go to the next slide. These are the requirement gathering techniques that we are going to discuss today. Interviews is one of them, most important also. Then there are questionnaires, observation, document and procedure analysis, joint application design, prototyping, and there are a few other techniques which are group techniques. Let's go to the next slide. Let's start with what goes into interviews. The 5 basic steps are: first stage is the selecting of interviews, finding the right stakeholder who would be the right source of information for us and whom we want to interview. Then designing the interview guide, what questions you are going to put forward to the stakeholders, preparing for the interview, conducting the interview, and post-interview follow-up. Let's go to the next one. So what goes into selecting the interviews? The steps are like you analyze the org chart and figure out who is the right person to interview and who will give you sufficient information for your project. And he should be representative of all users. When we say this, we mean that we want a balance of all kind of users. Again, on the e-commerce side example, we want users from the buyer community, users from the seller community. I mean, whoever involved to provide the requirement, he thinks from the buyer's perspective and from the seller's perspective, then the administrative user of the e-commerce website. So we need to ensure that we have users from users who are viewing from all perspectives and have a balance. Then panel to be selected such that there is no bias. Again, yeah. So the balance should be such that there are not excessive users from representing one particular requirement, and so as an analyst, your inclination would go, your focus would go into one particular area, and you may miss the other areas. So you need to have a right balance. Yeah, so let's talk about designing the interview guide. What you need to ensure. One thing that goes into it is the overall questioning strategy. Like the focus could be initially from asking questions from general area and narrowing down to specific topic. Like starting from the purpose of the website itself, and then going to specific features within that e-commerce website. Or the other approach could be start from a specific topic and then move towards the general area. Focus on the buying aspects on an e-commerce website first, gather requirements and that, and then slowly move towards building an entire solution step by step. It's just the approach how one would create the questionnaire. Next is types of interview questions. They can be open-ended one or close-ended ones. The open-ended ones are like you are giving the freedom to the user to express whatever they want. While close-ended ones are you're giving choice to them. I mean, you have 3 or 4 choices for all of your questions, and you want them to select out of that. Now, where is this? For example, this close-ended questions would be asked when, say, for example, you have some limitation, maybe a skill set limitation that you want to develop this solution on particular technology, .NET or Java, and you have only that skill set, so you're just giving that option. I mean, this was just an example that I'm giving you. So when there are limitations, you will ask for close-ended questions. Next slide. Preparing for the interview, confirm the place and time, review the areas that need to be covered, and encourage interview to bring reference materials. Those who are being interviewed, obviously they know the product very well, and maybe they have been using it, the existing process. They have a lot of documentation available with them to justify their requirements. So try to get more materials out of them. Next slide. Conducting the interview. Gather facts, opinions and speculations. You need to have keen eye on figuring out the opinions. Sometimes certain things are understood when you discuss with them and may not. When you want to gather the opinion, you would. It's better. It's face to face, and that's where interview helps. Recognize the perspective of each interviewee. Avoid bias when phrasing questions. Phrasing in ways that imply a wrong or right answer. So, again, when you're trying, the way to avoid bias is to be totally open-minded and don't frame questions as that you are favoring some particular solution. Just be open about to get their views. Never take sides on an issue. Now, you will never take side on an issue when you are open to get all the viewpoint which a user is offering. Tape record with individual and organizational permission. Tape recording is a good option to get back every time, and you will have a good input available at any point of time. You may miss things at times. So when you note down things, there are chances that you have interpreted in one particular way, and re-looking at the recording, you might get more insights. So, but this may not always be possible due to security reasons or other reasons. So if there is a possibility, do that. Next slide. Again, assuming tape recording will not work, you will have to do all this simultaneously. Following the interview guide, listening very carefully, observing the body language and emotions, separate facts from opinions, take notes, and plan the next question flow of the interview. So this is a very skillful job, doing multiple things at the same time. If you have not noted down, it was never done, or there was no point having that interview. Our memory is short. Let's go next. Post interview, you will consider asking more time if necessary. You may need. You will analyze the information that was shared, and you get back to them. Confirm the major points identified with interview. It's basically summarizing all that was discussed. Look for gaps and new questions. Obviously, there will be many more questions that will arise after first round. I can never imagine things getting sorted out in first round itself. Most of the time, you need more follow-up sessions. If it isn't in the field notes, it never happened. It's very important to note down. Just like you would want to ensure minutes of meeting every time your meeting is done. It's the same thing applies over here. Type up notes within 24 hours after the interview is over. Of course, humans have bad memory these days. So it's better to note it down. Next slide. So the next technique is questionnaires. It's similar to interview, but it's like you are giving up questionnaire for them to answer rather than you asking verbally. So the guidelines are similar to that were followed in interview. Choosing the respondents, they should be again representative of all users. Next slide. Now, what are the major difference between interviews and questionnaires? The information richness is high in interview while it's medium to low in questionnaires. The reason being, you are face to face with the person when you are interviewing, and you tend to get more information when you are interacting with someone, and questionnaires are more planned and written, so you get limited information out of it. Time required can be extensive in interviews, low to moderate in questionnaires. Expense is high in questionnaires, it's moderate. Yeah, high because from time perspective, and everyone has to spend a lot more time on giving the interviews. While questionnaires can be done simultaneously, send out the questionnaires to multiple users. When there are a large number of people from whom you want to get information, you would initiate with questionnaires so that you get major information out of them, and interviews can be done for selective people representing each of the users. Chance for follow-up and probing is good in interview because it's happening live, face-to-face, and limited in questionnaires. Confidentiality, interview is known to interviewer, while respondents can be unknown in questionnaires. Involvement of subject, interview is involved and committed. Respondent is passive, no clear commitment in case of questionnaires. Potential audience are limited numbers but complete responses from those interviewed. And as I said earlier, we can send out questionnaires to a large number of people. So response rate to questionnaires are commonly low, being 15% at times, considered very good. Low in the sense because it's very much done offline, right? People may choose to address it, some may not. So interview seems to get more information. Next slide. Other technique is observation. This is about directly observing users in the natural habitat. It's like on the job you are trying to get information. Say there was an existing process that was followed and you want to automate it. So then the analyst in this case would sit along, shadow the person who is working on this activity and try to observe. It serves as a good method to supplement interviews. An analyst can identify a process flow, awkward steps, and the pain points and opportunities for improvement. It's often difficult to obtain unbiased data. Reason being, when people are watched, they behave a bit differently. It does happen that they get more conscious and try to do things in the best way. There may be some shortcuts or other things that they may be doing when people are not watching them. So it's difficult to get an unbiased data at times. Be aware of normal and abnormal conditions. Yeah. So again, when you are observing someone, hopefully you are in most of the times in most normal conditions, and you are trying to note down those circumstances. But what about that process? How is it followed during the abnormal conditions? If you are not prepared for that, or your new application is not prepared for that, you may have issues later. So these are the types of information that you would discover: problems in existing system, opportunity to meet new need, organizational direction, names of key individuals. Again, stakeholder register that you need to refer, values of organization, special information processing circumstances, reason for current system design, and rules for processing data. Yeah. So let's go to the next slide. Again, what are the documents and procedures? They can be written work procedures, as I said earlier, business forms which explicitly indicate data flow in or out of system. What are the inputs and outputs that are expected? The report, the final report. As I said earlier, you will look into the report and work backwards to get the requirement. And the description of current information system. That will give you a good information. Let's go to the next slide. Joint application design. Now this technique involves all people to be co-located. Key users, managers, and system analysts would be involved in it. This is kind of a meeting or a face-to-face where everyone is together and jointly working out a design, what they want in the final product. Collecting system requirements simultaneously from key people. This I feel this will be significantly used, and it's a very important technique as such. To having people together at the same time, you get the consent of all people, sort out any issues then and there. It will be a good source of requirement, giving a good product output. As I said, it's conducted offsite. Let's go to the next slide. The end results of this is good documentation detailing existing systems, because everyone were closely involved. Consensus on the feature as they were all together present at the same time. Computer-aided software design could be used to prepare an initial design or a prototype in a joint application design. Let's go to the next slide. Prototyping. So where is this used? It's basically primarily used in R&D projects. When the requirements are not much clear, you want to come up with a product. The requirements get more and more clearer once you have something to show. So whatever information you have, you try to build across it, demonstrate it, show it to users, and you get more information. So that's where prototyping helps. It's a rudimentary version of system. Replaces or augments the system development life cycle. You tend to avoid many of the phases in SDLC as you are directly landing into development of the product. The goal is to develop concrete specification for ultimate system. Now, using this approach, you try to be very specific. You try to get very specific final output by demonstrating every time. Every time you build up an improved version of the product, and you finally reach the ultimate system. Next slide. So prototyping quickly converts requirement to a working version of system. Once the user sees requirement converted to system, we'll ask for modifications, and then there will be several rounds. It's not it's a time-consuming task. This activity takes quite a time. Is prototyping useful in any of these cases? User requests are not clear, as I said earlier. Few users are involved in the system. We don't have many users. Designs are complex and require concrete form. Most of the R&D projects are like that. History of communication problem between analyst and user. Yeah, that's one scenario. Tools are readily available to build prototype. Not every time you can build a prototype. In the scenarios where possible, you can use this technique. Please go ahead. The drawbacks are tendency to avoid formal documentation. As I said, you directly land into developing the product itself. So a lot of the processes are missed. Difficult to adapt to more general user audience. And systems development lifecycle checks are bypassed, as I said earlier. Let's go next slide. Now then now final set of techniques we'll discuss. They are like these are all group creativity techniques. One can be brainstorming where people the requirements are not as such concrete, or you don't have a total view, or users don't know exactly what is needed. That's when brainstorming comes into picture. Group of people brainstorming on various ideas that need to be implemented. So that's one technique. Delphi technique is getting consensus from several experts anonymously. Now, why would you use this technique? See, there are often scenarios when people don't express out in front of many people. I mean, they have certain viewpoint, but they may not be. They may feel shy to share those ideas, or they may feel that the major number of other experts may not like that idea, or some other kind of restrictions. So when you take inputs from them anonymously, you try to get more information out of them. So that's when a facilitator, basically this technique involves a facilitator who takes inputs from each of the users in a written chit or something. It's anonymously submitted, and then facilitator shares those ideas, and then further brainstorming occurs on that, all those suggestions basically. Then there's nominal group technique, which involves ranking of ideas. Now you have several ideas and you want to prioritize them. Each expert would rank those ideas, and then you get a score out of it, which idea was had maximum number of votes. You would go for that, and this technique basically helps in prioritizing the ideas. Next. Then there is mind mapping. Ideas or key items for discussion are outlined around a central node using branches or sub-branches. So you have several ideas, and then further break down the requirements within each of these ideas. So that's one. Then there is affinity diagram, where you want to categorize. You get several ideas, but there can be some ideas which are categorized in one particular area, and some are in one particular area. So when you categorize these ideas, it's an easy view and gives a clear understanding on prioritizing and implementing those ideas. Yeah, so let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so that's it. We are done with those techniques. There are many techniques. There are a few more techniques apart from what we have discussed today. The good idea would be to use multiple techniques to get as much information as possible and avoid. It also helps in avoiding any bias toward any particular suggestion or requirement. And as it says, theoretically you should gather information until saturation, until you learn anything new. Next time. So these are some references from where I taken up this content. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you very much for listening to this.